My brother and my wife tried to drug me into signing my company away. Few more weeks, and everything will be ours. I overheard her, telling my brother on the phone. So I let them think it worked, documented everything, set a trap, then buried them in federal court. All right, Reddit. This is the most messed up story you're going to hear this week. I found out my brother and my wife were plotting against me to steal my company. She was slowly poisoning me while my brother manipulated business contracts. Spent 4 months gathering evidence, building a counter-conspiracy, then destroyed both their lives. It's clearly going to be a long story, so you might want to get some snacks. Here's what went down. 4 years ago, I, 30 male, was living the dream that most guys only see in movies. My solar installation company, let's call it Phoenix Energy Systems, was pulling $3.2 million annually in revenue across Colorado and Wyoming. We had 42 employees, a fleet of custom trucks, and contracts booked through 2025. I was driving a blacked-out Ram TRX, living in a 4,500 square foot house I designed myself, and had good money in the bank. The business started when I was 26, fresh out of trade school with an electrical certification and $10,000 borrowed from my grandfather. My older brother Brody, 36 male, joined as a partner 2 years later when we needed capital for expansion. He brought his MBA and family connections. I brought the technical expertise and work ethic. Perfect partnership, or so I thought. Brody had always been the golden child growing up. Star athlete, honor roll student, the works. Our parents treated him like he could do no wrong while I was always the screw-up who needed guidance. Even as adults, family dinners usually involved subtle reminders about how Brody was the smart business brother, while I was just good with my hands. Enter Sophia, 30 female, investment banker at Wells Fargo, who Brody introduced me to at his house during a Broncos playoff game. Gorgeous, sharp as hell, could discuss market trends while shotgunning a beer. She seemed genuinely impressed with what I'd built, asking detailed questions about our growth projections and expansion plans. Most women's eyes glazed over when I talked business. Sophia took notes. We dated for 18 months before I proposed. I remember thinking I'd finally made it. Beautiful finance on my arm, business booming. Even my parents seemed proud for once. The wedding was perfect. Sophia insisted on a prenup, which I respected since she had her own assets to protect. Brody helped negotiate the terms, ensuring both parties maintained their professional interests. Smart move, I thought at the time. About 10 months into marriage, weird things started happening. I'd always been in incredible shape, hitting the gym 6 days a week, running half marathons, could work 12-hour installation days without breaking a sweat. Suddenly, I was exhausted constantly. My max bench dropped from 315 to barely 225. I'd get dizzy climbing ladders on job sites. Sophia was incredibly concerned about my health. She'd researched every symptom online, scheduled appointments with specialists, even hired a nutritionist to optimize my diet. Her care seemed genuine, almost obsessive. She'd prepare these elaborate meals with organic ingredients and weird supplements, watching me eat every bite. You're working too hard, babe. Your body is telling you to slow down. Meanwhile, Brody started pushing aggressive changes to our business structure. New liability arrangements, updated insurance policies, complex partnership modifications that supposedly protected us from industry lawsuits. Every time I questioned the urgency, he'd lecture me about sophisticated business practices and how my technical background didn't prepare me for high-level corporate strategy. The changes kept coming. New banking arrangements that required both partners to approve major expenditures. Updated ownership percentages that gave Brody more control over strategic decisions. A succession plan that favored the business operations partner in case of health issues. I was too exhausted to fight him on every detail, and honestly, the paperwork was mind-numbing. Brody would spread contracts across my kitchen table after dinner. Sophia would bring coffee and encourage me to just get through it so you can rest. I was being played harder than a rigged casino game. Last December, Sophia made this elaborate dinner with some kind of exotic spice blend she'd ordered online. Tasted slightly bitter, but she explained it was supposed to boost energy and focus. I ate everything because she'd spent 3 hours preparing it, and I wasn't about to hurt her feelings. Around 9 p.m., I went upstairs to grab my laptop charger and heard voices from the kitchen. Our house has this acoustic quirk where sound travels perfectly from the kitchen to the second-floor hallway. Sophia was on speakerphone, and I immediately recognized Brody's voice. Something about their tone made me freeze at the top of the stairs. "The timing is perfect," Sophia said, laughing like she'd just won the lottery. "He's becoming more compliant every week. The new dosage is working beautifully." Brody sounded equally pleased. "How much longer until we can move to the final phase?" "Maybe 6 more weeks." I need him completely manageable before we present the ownership transfer. He's still asking too many questions about the business changes. They spent the next 15 minutes discussing strategies for keeping me cooperative, timelines for contract signings, and something about a shell company Brody had established called Rocky Mountain Solar Solutions. Same business model as ours, ready to absorb our client base once they executed their plan. The best part is how grateful he is for all my help, Sophia said, practically giggling. He actually thanks me for taking care of his health. It's almost too easy. They discussed meeting the next day to review legal documents and coordinate their next moves. The conversation ended with them both laughing about how I'd react when I finally figured out what was happening. I stood in that hallway for 20 minutes, my brain trying to process what I'd heard. My wife was poisoning me. My brother was stealing my company. And they were both laughing about how stupid I was. Instead of charging downstairs and confronting them, I made a decision that probably saved my life. I went back to our bedroom, acted completely normal when Sophia came up, and started planning my counterattack. But first, I needed backup from someone I actually trusted. The next morning, while Sophia was at her 6 a.m. yoga class, I called my childhood buddy Tommy. We'd grown up 3 houses apart, been through everything together since we were 8 years old. This guy had my back through middle school fights, high school breakups, and every major decision I'd ever made. Tommy answered on the second ring, probably eating cereal and watching SportsCenter like every morning for the past 20 years. I told him briefly about the phone call I heard. His response? Let me guess. Sophia finally snapped and tried to murder you with organic kale? I almost laughed despite everything. Close. Try prescription drugs in my dinner. Dead silence for about 5 seconds. Then, I'll be at your house in 20 minutes. Don't eat anything she cooked. He showed up in his work truck. He runs a plumbing business and looks like he could bench press a refrigerator. He took one look at me and immediately knew something was seriously wrong. All right, you look like death warmed over, he said, walking into my kitchen like he owned the place. When's the last time you ate something that didn't come from your loving wife? I explained everything I'd overheard the night before. Tommy listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a minute. Then, so your trophy wife and your genius brother have been slowly murdering you to steal your company. Did I get that right? That's the summary, yeah. Well, shit. I always said Sophia was too good looking to be trustworthy. Hot chicks don't marry electricians unless they want something. We drove to an urgent care clinic in Boulder, where I paid cash for a comprehensive drug screening. While we waited for results, Tommy provided commentary on the other patients. Check out this guy, he whispered, nodding toward an older man in the corner. Probably here because his wife's been poisoning him too. It's like an epidemic. Shut up, Tommy. Roger that. 4 hours later, we had confirmation. Lorazepam and metoprolol in my bloodstream at dangerous levels. The PA explained that prolonged exposure could cause cardiac arrhythmia, cognitive impairment, and potentially fatal heart complications. Instead of going to the cops right away, I called Derek, who runs a private security firm and handles surveillance for divorce attorneys. We'd met through a client who needed security cameras for his solar array. Derek was former military intelligence, the kind of guy who could disappear into shadows and reappear with information you didn't know existed. How elaborate do you want to get? Derek asked after I explained the situation. I want to know everything they're planning before they know I know. Tommy jumped in. What he means is, we want to go full CIA on these idiots. Cameras, microphones, maybe some drones if you've got them. Within 6 hours, Derek had equipped us with professional-grade surveillance stuff. Micro cameras smaller than quarters. Audio recorders that could pick up conversations through walls. GPS trackers for their vehicles, and software to monitor their phones and computers. While Sophia was having lunch with her banker friends, Derek, Tommy, and I turned my house into a recording studio. Hidden cameras in some areas of the house, and Sophia's walk-in closet. Derek also ran background checks on both Sophia and Brody. Turns out Sophia had been fired from her previous bank for irregularities in client account management. Brody had been involved in 2 previous business partnerships that ended badly, with his partners claiming he'd manipulated contracts and financial arrangements. Your wife's got a pattern of financial manipulation, Derek said, showing me her employment history. Your brother's been running the same game for years. You're not their first target. The hardest part was acting normal around both of them. Sophia would serve dinner, and I'd have to pretend everything was fine. I started palming food and disposing of it later, then claiming I'd eaten everything. Lost 15 pounds in 2 weeks, but told her it was from all the exercise I'd been getting at work. Tommy helped by bringing me actual food to the office every day. Can't have you starving to death while we're trying to prevent you from being poisoned to death, he said, dropping off sandwiches from his favorite deli. Though I gotta say, This is the weirdest diet plan I've ever seen. Brody called 3 times that week wanting to schedule meetings about finalizing the corporate restructuring. Each time I delayed, claiming I needed more time to review the contracts. His frustration was obvious, but he tried to hide it behind his usual condescending patience. We can't wait forever for you to catch up, little brother. Time is money in this business. That phrase, little brother, had been his way of putting me down since we were kids. Finally understanding the manipulation behind it felt like waking up from a 20-year coma. Over the next month, the surveillance equipment captured everything. Sophia had developed a sophisticated routine for drugging my food. She'd prepare 2 identical plates, doctor mine with precisely crushed pills when she thought I wasn't watching, then serve dinner like nothing happened. The woman was methodical about it. I found her drug stash hidden inside a box of organic tampons in our master bathroom. 6 different bottles of prescription medications with fake names from 4 different pharmacies across 3 counties. She'd been doctor shopping systematically to avoid detection, using fake IDs and paying cash. The audio recordings revealed the full scope of their conspiracy. Sophia and Brody had daily phone calls discussing my progress, strategies for contract manipulation, and contingency plans if I became suspicious. More disturbing was discovering how long they'd been planning this. Text message recovery revealed conversations going back 14 months, basically since our honeymoon. They'd been planning my downfall since the beginning of our marriage. Brody had incorporated Rocky Mountain Solar Solutions 8 months earlier and had already started recruiting our best installers. He'd promised them 20% raises and management positions once the ownership transition happened. 3 of my most trusted foremen were already planning to leave, but the most devastating discovery came from a hidden camera in Sophia's closet. She'd been meeting with someone I didn't recognize, a woman in her 50s who turned out to be a forensic accountant. They were developing strategies to challenge our business valuations and financial records, essentially preparing to prove that I'd been mismanaging the company and needed to be removed for fiduciary reasons. They'd thought of everything. The poisoning was just phase 1. Phase 2 involved demonstrating my cognitive decline to justify business management changes. Phase 3 was complete ownership transfer based on my inability to make sound business decisions. Derek's investigation revealed that Sophia's mystery consultant was actually Brody's ex-girlfriend from college, now a CPA specializing in partnership dissolutions. They'd been planning this takeover for over 2 years, waiting for the right opportunity to execute. My attorney, Alina Wells, specialized in white-collar crime and partnership fraud. She reviewed our evidence and immediately contacted the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. This wasn't just state-level poisoning and theft. The interstate business implications made it federal. But I didn't just want them arrested. These people had spent months systematically destroying my health and planning to steal everything I'd worked for. They deserved to lose everything, exactly like they'd planned for me. Alina helped me design a controlled confrontation that would capture their conspiracy on record while giving law enforcement everything they needed for prosecution. We scheduled a business meeting at my office where Brody thought he was finally getting me to sign over majority ownership. Instead, it would be a sting operation with federal agents recording from the conference room next door. I spent 2 weeks preparing for this meeting, stopped palming food and started eating meals at the office instead, claiming work was too busy to come home for lunch. My energy returned rapidly once the drugs cleared my system. Started working out again, felt sharp and focused for the first time in months. Brody noticed the change and started pushing harder for the meeting. He'd call daily, sometimes twice, emphasizing how time-sensitive the new contracts were. Sophia began increasing the dinner doses, probably trying to compensate for my improved condition. The week before our confrontation, I did something that felt incredible. I started messing with them back. I left fake documents on my home office desk suggesting I was considering selling the entire company to a national solar chain. Completely fabricated, but detailed enough to seem legitimate. Sophia found them within hours and immediately called Brody in a panic. "He's planning to sell everything. We need to move now." I also started mentioning fictional health problems to Sophia, claiming the doctors had found something concerning in my blood work that might affect my ability to make business decisions. She practically salivated at this information, immediately offering to help me understand any medical documentation. Meanwhile, Derek was running counter-surveillance on both of them. Brody had been meeting with potential investors for his shell company, essentially selling them shares and assets he didn't own yet. Sophia had been consulting with divorce attorneys about protecting assets in case their plan failed. They were planning backup strategies for their backup strategies. But I had backup strategies for their backup strategies for their backup strategies. The morning of our scheduled meeting, Brody showed up at my office with a briefcase full of legal documents and this confident swagger that made me want to break his jaw. He'd brought two witnesses, business associates who thought they were observing a routine partnership restructuring. Federal agents were recording everything from the adjacent conference room, while Derek monitored from a van outside with additional surveillance equipment. Alina was connected via secure phone line, ready to provide legal guidance if things went sideways. Brody spread contracts across my conference table like he was dealing cards in Vegas. New ownership percentages giving him 65% control. Updated liability arrangements that made me personally responsible for any future business debts. A succession plan that automatically transferred my shares to him if I became unable to fulfill business obligations due to health or competency issues. This is the evolution we've been working toward, Brody explained to his witnesses. My brother's always been the hands-on technical guy, but the business has grown beyond what his skill set can handle. This structure positions us for major expansion while protecting everyone's interests. I let him go through his entire presentation, explaining how each contract change benefited the company, why the timing was critical, how this would secure our family's financial future. He was smooth as hell, I'll give him that. His witnesses were nodding along. Just need your signature here, here, and here, Brody said, pointing to signature lines that would essentially give him everything I'd built. Instead of signing, I leaned back in my chair and looked directly at him. You know what's funny, Brody? I've been thinking about this meeting for weeks, and I keep coming back to something our father used to say about you. His confident expression faltered slightly. What's that supposed to mean? He said you were always good at taking credit for other people's work. The room got quiet. Brody tried to laugh it off, but I could see his wheels turning. This is just business restructuring, nothing personal about it. I stood up and walked to my office safe, which was visible through the open door. The federal agents were probably wondering what the hell I was doing, but this was my show. Business restructuring, I repeated, pulling out a thick folder. Is that what you call conspiracy to commit fraud and, well, attempted murder? I dropped the folder on the conference table. Photos of Sophia's drug stash spilled out, along with transcripts of their recorded conversations, medical reports showing systematic poisoning, and financial records of Brody's shell company. Brody went white. His business associates started backing toward the door, probably realizing they'd stumbled into something way beyond their expertise. Where did you get this? Brody demanded. Turns out when you try to poison someone, you should probably make sure they're not recording every conversation in their house. I spread out more evidence across the table. Screenshots of their text messages, photos of Sophia doctoring my food, bank records showing the fake prescriptions, incorporation documents for Rocky Mountain Solar Solutions. You should be proud, brother. This is probably the most elaborate theft I've ever seen. Brody tried to grab some of the documents, but I stepped between him and the table. I wouldn't touch those if I were you. The FBI tends to get cranky about evidence tampering. That's when the federal agents walked in with their badges out, and Brody finally realized how completely screwed he was. The arrests happened like a coordinated military operation. While Brody was getting cuffed in my conference room, federal agents were executing search warrants at his apartment, Sophia's office, and our house. They'd been planning this coordination for 2 weeks, ensuring nobody could destroy evidence or warn co-conspirators. I decided I wanted to watch Sophia's arrest in person. After seeing Brody get dragged away in handcuffs, Tommy and I drove straight to her bank and waited in the parking garage. The federal agents had agreed to let me observe from a distance. You sure you want to do this? Tommy asked, leaning against his truck. Watching your ex-wife get arrested might be traumatic. I think I'll manage. Fair enough. Just don't expect me to catch you if you faint like some Victorian lady. Shut up, Brody. Sophia came back from her usual expensive lunch. She was walking toward her car, checking her phone, completely oblivious to what was waiting for her. 2 unmarked cars moved to block her escape routes. When the federal agent stepped out with badges, her face went through this beautiful progression. Confusion, recognition, panic, then desperate calculation. She looked around the garage like she was planning to run, which would have been hilarious in designer heels. Tommy provided quiet commentary. $10 says she tries to run in those ridiculous shoes. That's when she spotted me leaning against a concrete pillar about 30 feet away, just watching. Our eyes met, and I saw the exact moment she realized how screwed she was. You! She screamed, pointing at me like I was the villain in this situation. You did this! You set me up! Tommy muttered under his breath. Yeah, he set you up by not dying when you poisoned him. What a bastard. I didn't say anything, just stayed where I was with my arms crossed. The federal agents were approaching her slowly, letting the scene play out. Sophia started walking toward me, getting more agitated with each step. How dare you spy on me? One of the agents tried to redirect her attention. Ma'am, we have a warrant for your arrest. Please stop and put your hands where we can see them. She ignored him completely, focused entirely on me. You're pathetic. You were never good enough for me anyway. I was doing you a favor by trying to make you more successful. I finally spoke, keeping my voice completely calm. More successful at dying, you mean? Tommy snorted. That broke something in her. She started screaming about how I'd never appreciated her, how she'd wasted 3 years of her life on someone beneath her standards. You think you're so smart? She yelled, getting closer. You're nothing without Brody's guidance. You're just a blue-collar worker pretending to be a businessman. Tommy stepped forward slightly, ready to intervene if she got too close. Lady, that blue-collar worker just outsmarted your entire murder conspiracy. Maybe rethink the insults. The federal agents were getting nervous about her approaching me, but I gestured for them to wait. I wanted to hear exactly who she really was when the mask came off. I gave you everything, she continued, completely unhinged now. I made you better food than you deserved. I managed your health better than you ever could. I was upgrading your pathetic life. You were too stubborn, too controlling. Someone needed to help you make better decisions. I didn't respond, just watched silently. One of the agents stepped forward. Ma'am, you need to stop talking and comply with our instructions. Sophia whipped around to face him. Do you know who I am? I'm a senior investment banker. I manage portfolios worth millions. You can't treat me like some common criminal. Tommy couldn't resist. Actually, attempting to murder someone makes you exactly a common criminal. The agent remained professional. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, drug trafficking, and federal fraud charges. Please turn around and place your hands behind your back. That's when she completely lost it. Started screaming about how this was all a misunderstanding, how I was lying about everything. When they tried to cuff her, she fought back, trying to pull away and continue yelling at me. This is your fault, she screamed as they finally got the handcuffs on. You're destroying an innocent woman's life because you're too paranoid to trust your own family. I watched them search her purse and find 3 more prescription bottles with fake names. Her face went white when they held up the evidence. These aren't mine, she claimed. Someone must have planted them. I couldn't help smirking at that. Someone planted prescription bottles with your fingerprints in your purse? As they walked her toward the police car, she kept turning back to scream at me. You'll regret this! You'll never find anyone better than me! You're nothing without me! Tommy called back to her. Lady, he's got a better relationship with his electrician than he had with you. I followed at a distance, just to watch her get loaded into the back seat. Right before they closed the door, she looked directly at me one last time. I should have used more poison, she said with pure hatred in her voice. The federal agent who'd been leading the arrest walked over to me as they drove away. That confession she just made? That's going to make prosecution a lot easier. I nodded, still watching the police car disappear. Good. Tommy slapped me on the back. Well, that was entertaining. Your ex-wife's got a real flair for the dramatic. Too bad she's also completely insane. Derek called while we were driving back to the office. How'd it go? Better than I expected. She basically confessed to attempted murder in front of 6 federal agents. Beautiful. Some people really are their own worst enemies. The preliminary hearings were brutal for both of them. Sophia's attorney tried to argue she'd been coerced by Brody, while Brody's attorney claimed everything was legitimate business planning. Neither argument worked when prosecutors played the recorded conversations. During the proceedings, I filed for divorce and invoked the fraud clauses in our prenup. Sophia's criminal charges voided any claims to marital assets. I also exercised my right to buy out Brody's partnership shares at the predetermined penalty rate, basically pennies on the dollar. Within 60 days, I owned 100% of Phoenix Energy Systems and all shared assets. Sophia lost everything: her car, her investments, her reputation. Brody lost his ownership stake, his shell company got dissolved, and his recruits came crawling back begging for their jobs. The federal trial was a masterpiece of legal destruction. Prosecutors had every single evidence. The defense teams had nothing except expensive suits and desperate arguments. But before I could enjoy watching their legal destruction, I had to deal with my parents. 3 days after Brody's arrest, my parents showed up at my house unannounced. I was reviewing business contracts when Derek's security system alerted me to vehicles in my driveway. 2 cars, my dad's Cadillac and my mom's Lexus SUV. They'd brought backup. I watched through the security monitors as my parents walked to the front door with my Aunt Susan and Uncle Frank. When I opened the door, my mother pushed past me without invitation, followed by the rest of them. They stationed themselves in my living room like they were staging an occupation. We need to talk, my dad announced, using his stern voice that used to work when I was 12. My mother started crying immediately, which was her standard manipulation tactic. How could you do this to Brody? He's your brother. Family doesn't destroy family over business disagreements. I looked at the four of them standing in my house, demanding I justify protecting myself from attempted murder, and felt something snap inside me. Business disagreement? I said, staying calm. Brody and Sophia tried to poison me to death. They were drugging my food for over a year. My Aunt Susan jumped in with the family's standard defense. Brody would never hurt you. You're being paranoid and vindictive. This is about jealousy, not evidence. My Uncle Frank, who'd always been Brody's biggest cheerleader, decided to play mediator. Look, maybe things got out of hand, but sending your brother to federal prison isn't the answer. Family problems should be handled within the family. My dad nodded along like this made perfect sense. We've already talked to Brody's attorney. If you drop the charges and settle this privately, we can all move forward. I stared at him for a full 10 seconds. You want me to drop attempted murder charges against the brother who tried to kill me? My mother's tears intensified. Stop being so dramatic. Brody loves you. He tried to steal my company while slowly poisoning me to death. There are recordings of him planning it. Those recordings could be taken out of context, my Aunt Susan said. People say things they don't mean when they're frustrated. That's when I realized these people were completely delusional. Brody could have literally shot me in front of them, and they'd find a way to blame me for bleeding on their carpet. My dad tried to assert authority. You're going to drop these charges and help your brother. I walked to my front door and opened it wide. Get out of my house. My mother looked shocked. We're not leaving until you agree to help Brody. He's facing 8 years in prison because of your vindictiveness. He's facing 8 years because he committed federal crimes. The FBI has evidence of everything. This isn't a family dispute. It's an attempted crime. Frank tried one more approach. Think about your mother. This is destroying her. Is your pride really worth tearing apart the family? I looked directly at my mother, who was still performing her crying routine. Brody chose to poison me. Sophia chose to help him. You're choosing to blame me instead of them. Everyone's making their choices here. My dad's face turned red. You always were a selfish, ungrateful kid. We should have known you'd turn on family when things got difficult. That comment hit different, because it revealed exactly how they'd always seen me. The expendable son who existed to support Brody's success. You're absolutely right, Dad. I'm turning on the family members who tried to kill me. Derek chose that moment to walk through my back door, probably having monitored the whole conversation through the security system. Tommy was right behind him, carrying a bag from Subway, and looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Evening, folks, Derek said, taking one look at my parents. Nice night to visit family? Tommy unwrapped his sandwich and took a bite. Let me guess. Family intervention because someone tried to poison their son, and somehow that's the victim's fault? Susan tried to ignore both of them. Think about Christmas. Think about family gatherings. Do you really want to destroy all of that over some business problems? Tommy nearly choked on his sandwich laughing. Business problems? Lady, that's like calling bank robbery a withdrawal dispute. Derek stepped closer to them, and suddenly these four people who'd been acting like they owned my house started looking uncomfortable. From what I understand, Derek said conversationally, family gatherings are probably safer without people who poison each other. My mother turned to me with desperate eyes. Choose family, honey. Choose Brody. Don't let outsiders influence you against your own blood. Tommy finished chewing and looked directly at her. Ma'am, with all due respect, your definition of family is seriously screwed up. Normal families don't require their kids to almost die to prove loyalty. My dad made one final attempt at intimidation. If you go through with this prosecution, don't expect us to be there for you anymore. Tommy couldn't resist. Oh no, he's losing the support of people who think murder is negotiable. However will he cope? Derek laughed out loud. Isn't that what got you into this situation in the first place? They left after that, but not before my mother delivered one last guilt trip. I hope you can live with yourself when your brother is in prison. This family will never be the same. After they drove away, Tommy looked at me seriously for the first time all evening. I knew what he was about to say. All right, Tommy, just say it. You finally figured out what I've been telling you since we were kids. Those folks of you are seriously screwed up. Those are not your family. They never were. Well, at least I have you, brother. Unless you're planning to murder me too, I joked. Well, not you, but I'm definitely up to help you bury those idiots. You see, Tommy is my real brother. Always has been. Now here's what happened next. Sophia got 6 years for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit fraud, and drug trafficking charges. The trafficking addition came from her multi-state prescription fraud operation, which apparently qualified as interstate commerce under federal law. Brody got 8 years as the mastermind, plus additional charges for racketeering, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder. His previous partnership disputes came back to haunt him when prosecutors established a pattern of business fraud going back 7 years. Both got felony convictions that'll destroy their career prospects permanently. Sophia can never work in banking again. Brody lost all his professional licenses and certifications. But federal prison was just the appetizer. The main course was the civil lawsuit. I sued for actual damages, punitive damages, medical expenses, lost business opportunities, emotional distress, and attorney fees. My legal team asked for $850,000 total compensation. We got every penny, plus court costs and additional penalties. Here's where it gets really satisfying. Sophia's parents had co-signed some of her investment loans, thinking they were helping with business opportunities. When she couldn't pay the civil judgment from prison, they lost their house in Aspen and had to liquidate their retirement accounts. Her investment banker friends who'd been part of our social circle. Turns out they'd been giving her insider information for years, thinking it was just casual conversation. The SEC got involved and 3 of them lost their jobs. Brody's wife Emily divorced him while he was awaiting sentencing. She took their 2 kids and moved to her parents' place in Oregon. His professional reputation was completely destroyed. Business journals published articles about the solar poisoning conspiracy that made him unemployable in any corporate environment. I made sure everyone in our industry knew exactly what had happened. Trade publications, industry conferences, LinkedIn posts, social media campaigns. The story of Brody and Sophia's conspiracy became a cautionary tale about partnership fraud and corporate security. Neither of them will ever work in their chosen professions again. 6 months after their sentencing, my company was operating at maximum capacity with a 6-month waiting list for new installations. We landed 4 major commercial contracts specifically because potential clients had read about the case and wanted to support my business. The largest was a $2.3 million hospital installation that came with references to 3 additional medical facilities. I hired 12 new installers, expanded into battery storage systems, and opened a second location in Wyoming. Annual revenue hit $4.1 million by year-end, making it our most profitable year ever. Derek became our permanent security consultant, implementing protocols to prevent corporate espionage and partnership fraud. I received letters from both Sophia and Brody in federal prison, pathetic attempts at apologies, and requests for help with their appeals. I read each one once, then fed them through the industrial shredder in my office. Tommy happened to be there when Sophia's letter arrived. He read it over my shoulder as I opened it. "Listen to this," I said, reading aloud. "She claims she'd been manipulated by Brody, that she'd never wanted to hurt me, that she still loves me, and hopes we can reconcile after she serves her time." Tommy nearly spit out his coffee. "Reconcile? What's she gonna do? Promise not to poison you next time?" Sophia's letter was particularly entertaining because it revealed how completely delusional she still was. Pure manipulation, even from prison. Brody's letter was more predictable. He blamed everything on Sophia's influence, claimed he'd been trying to protect the business from her schemes, suggested we could rebuild our relationship if I helped him appeal his conviction. Tommy said, reading over my shoulder. "Guy tried to murder you, and he's acting like he was doing you a favor." Their appeals were denied within 6 months. Sophia tried to argue ineffective counsel and coercion. Brody claimed prosecutorial misconduct and insufficient evidence. Both arguments failed because the evidence was overwhelming, and their own recorded conversations proved premeditation. The final piece of satisfaction came when additional charges were filed. Federal investigators discovered that Brody had been running similar partnership scams in Nevada and Utah, using shell companies to steal assets from other business owners. His sentence got extended to 12 years, with no possibility of early release. Sophia's banking fraud investigation revealed she'd been embezzling from client accounts for 3 years. Her sentence got extended to 8 years, and she'll never qualify for parole due to the violent nature of the poisoning charges. 2 years later, Phoenix Energy Systems has become the largest solar installation company in the Rocky Mountain region. We've got 87 employees, operations in 4 states, and annual revenue approaching $8 million. I bought a new headquarters building, upgraded our entire fleet, and established a company profit-sharing program that makes our installers some of the highest paid in the industry. My personal life improved dramatically once I stopped trusting the wrong people. Started dating a mechanical engineer who designs wind turbines, someone who actually understands and respects what I've built instead of trying to steal it. We're taking things slow, but she's nothing like Sophia. The house got completely renovated after Sophia's arrest. New kitchen, new master bedroom, new everything to eliminate any reminders of her presence. Derek's security system stayed in place. My relationship with my parents never recovered, and I'm better off with that. They visited Brody in prison but never once asked how I was doing after nearly being murdered. Some family dynamics are toxic no matter what you do to fix them. The solar industry has embraced our story as a case study in business security and partnership protection. I've spoken at 3 industry conferences about recognizing corporate fraud and implementing security protocols. Last month, I got a call from the federal prosecutor who handled our case. Apparently, Sophia had been trying to negotiate a sentence reduction by providing information about other financial crimes she'd witnessed. Her cooperation led to investigations of several other banking professionals, but didn't help her own situation. She keeps asking about you, the prosecutor mentioned. Wants to know if you'd be willing to meet with her. I laughed so hard. Tell her I'm busy running the company she tried to steal. Brody hasn't attempted any contact since his failed appeal. Word through mutual industry contacts is that he's been completely broken by prison life. Turns out the golden child doesn't handle adversity very well when he can't manipulate his way out of it. Every morning when I pull into our headquarters parking lot, I see the sign that reads Phoenix Energy Systems, rising above the competition. It reminds me that sometimes the best revenge is simply being more successful than the people who tried to destroy you. They thought they could drug me into submission and steal everything I'd worked for. Instead, they gave me the motivation to build something bigger and better than they ever could have imagined.